Yep. What you want to ask Galen? What happened with this big raid in Ocean Springs?
As far as I know, Galen, they haven't released any facts about the FBI was there for.
We're short on news right now. That's what's going on. So we don't know anything. So we're committing the official drive-by act of journalism. We saw a bunch of FBI agents outside of a place in tactical gear outside of a drugstore in Ocean Springs. At this time, we don't know anything.
Maybe somebody,
get to the bottom of it.
You people just go crazy over stories like this because, number one, the man might needed a prescription filled.
In tactical gear.
They needed to get it quickly because they had to go to another maneuver. That's right. That's right.
Full of people.
Yeah, it was a mass prescription.
Right? Yeah, really.
With an AR-15.
You think so?
That's what they had out there. I mean, I got an AR-15. I guarantee you, if I walked up in there, there'd probably be a whole bunch of people right after you with tactical gear. But yeah, there's something going on. I have to wonder with them busting all these people for opioids. This is just speculation. This is another kind of something like that.
Cracking down on it.
Yeah, not cracking down enough though. I mean, you go to VA. Gee, my foot hurts. Oxycontin.
Right.
Gee, my left nut hurts. Right. Oxycontin.
I had a tooth pulled. Here's a bottle of Lortab.
Yeah.
All right, Galen, let's talk about this real quick. We're at our outside studio. I guess you noticed, right? And today, I just want to do something different. And with Regina here, and all the gang gathering here at MississippiCoastTV.com, new players are coming in, people driving in from New Orleans for interviews. Right. So, I mean, I think the network is really kicking off really well. Tell me about this thing the mayor had down at the Visitor Center in Biloxi concerning the Bonnie Caraway levees over there.
Bonnie Carey Spillway.
Spillways.
Every Gulf Coast mayor got involved with it, and they were all on hand to be able to talk about the water releases, and there have now been 2 of them. The first one was for about 44 days, and it happened as of February 18th or so, and then it lasted through March. This one, it's been open since, I want to say, the 5th of May, sometime early this month, let's just go ahead and say. And what they're finding is that about a 35% reduction in the crab landings that they're having, the lower population of brown shrimp, which of course they're going to find a new place to go to their breeding grounds and find saltier water. And that's the biggest problem, is right now the parts per thousand on the salinity of the water out there that they've tested is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 10 parts per thousand. And it's far too few parts per thousand in order for these creatures to be able to exist. In addition to that, the tributaries that come from something like 10 or 13 different states, I want to say, feed the Mississippi River. So all of the farmland from up in the Midwest is dumping all of the nitrates and pesticides, poisons, so on and so forth into the river. And where does it come right out of? It comes right out of the Mississippi Gulf Coast, the Louisiana Gulf Coast, but it impacts us immediately.
It's a mixture between fresh water and salt water. And
it's a very mild mixture of fresh water and salt water as of right now because of these water.
But the more they open, is the more time for it to spread.
Correct.
If these dolphins are dying all of a sudden, they're washing up on the beach. It's summertime now. Right. It don't look good for tourism here on the state of Mississippi right now.
Well, one of the guys who was part of the meeting, and I'd have to look up his name to remember, he mentioned that there was a total of 84 as of that day. There have been another couple 4 that have happened in the meantime. And I think that of all the things that will really bend people out of shape, and folks come down here to enjoy the wildlife. Folks come down here because they like to see dolphins playing out in the water. And if they, instead of seeing them playing out in the water, are seeing them washing up dead on the beach. And I was speaking to somebody over at the Maritime Museum, and they had an event over there where the kids built a boat. And during this event, they got to sail the boat after they got finished building it. So they take off from the Maritime Museum, and they're out there sailing around and enjoying their day and the fruits of their labor. And there were a couple dolphin carcasses on the beach as a treat for them after they got done with their little adventure out there. And I don't think anybody likes to see it, and it has a lot of shock value to it that is going to bother an awful lot of people down here on the coast, and probably, unless I've missed my guess, throughout the country, because nobody likes seeing dead dolphin on CNN or on Fox News or in our local news affiliates, including yours.
It's just like we had the flesh-eating bacteria that was going around, the Gulf of Mexico for a while. And it was scary for people on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. All right, Regina Brim,
Yes.
You had a big story that you wanted to talk about some police officer, okay, that was going on, and it was involving. What was going on with that? You brought that attention to me the other day.
Well, I wanted to talk about the continuing disconnect between police officers. I have a good many friends who do what's called First Amendment audits, and a lot of people go ahead and don't understand their rights. I know when I've been stopped by the police officer as a passenger, they've asked passengers their ID. They've asked to search your car, and here in Mississippi, we are not a stop and ID state, period. So if an officer walks up to you and says, "Can I see your ID?" unless he has RAS, which is reasonable, articulable suspicion, you don't have to give your ID. Now, if he saw you commit a crime, yeah, you got to give up your ID. If you're a witness to a crime, you got to give your ID. And you can't give him a fictitious name. But just to be rolled up on and ask for ID, that's a problem. Also, if you're carrying a gun, just because you're carrying a gun, it's a Supreme Court ruling, and I'll look that up and mention it on my show. If you are someplace where you can carry a gun and you are carrying it lawfully, that cannot be a reason for a stop by a police officer.
Okay, we'll take you up on that issue on our show later on today on MississippiCoastTV.com. Let me introduce a new guest that's joined us here. Jerry, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. Coming up from New Orleans, Louisiana, I appreciate it so much.
Come on and step up from the sun. Luke, just right there. That'll be fine. Now, tell me, Jerry, tell everybody why you're here today.
I'm here to get the cannabis movement, the train itself, in motion.
Right.
Born and raised in Louisiana. And in 2007, I actually relocated to Colorado Springs, voted on Amendment 64, and watched an idea blossom into a revolutionary movement. It's time for the Gulf South to actually become the agricultural giant that it should be.
And you wanted to talk about your stories involving opioid as well, right?
Correct.
Addiction. Now, you was a cop in the city of New Orleans for how many years?
7 years.
7 years, on the street.
Correct.
And you seen it all, didn't you?
Too much. Too much.
Then you moved to Colorado, am I correct on that?
After my injury, which was, like I said, in 07, however, I went ahead. I had an on-the-job injury. I had to get my whole left shoulder reconstructed. And a year prior to me getting my disability retirement, I actually started on a low form of opioid. And in my opinion, the gateway is alcohol. Okay, I've lost too many family members to alcohol. I'm not anti-alcohol. I'm pro anything you want. Anything in moderation is good. I don't care what it is. But here's my point. So when I relocated to Colorado, I stopped drinking, and then I graduated to OxyContin and Percocet, and then all hell broke loose.
Well, you're going to be sitting down with the lady today, and that's Kristie Johnson from End Times in America. And you're going to have a serious debate with her, because she believes that marijuana leads to harder drugs.
Wrong.
But let's talk to Galen Parker real quick. Galen's back. The whole staff is gathered here. And Galen, Blessing of the Fleet's on the way, right?
Absolutely. It's this weekend. There's a series of events that are associated with it. Not least importantly, the big race between Rusty Quave, mayor of D'Iberville, and Biloxi Mayor Andrew Fofo Gillich. That's going to be coming up as the precursor to everything else, and that's going to be going on Saturday morning.
George Lawrence said in the last city council meeting that we've seen on YouTube that Fofo Gillich was the reason they lost that race last year, because he talked too damn much.
Well, there's been a certain back and forth that's gone on between the two of them, and so we're just going to have to get out there on the water and see how everything shakes out.
Well, how'd your Caribbean cruise go? That's what I want to know.
It went fabulously. I couldn't complain if I wanted to. And in Nassau, we were able to sit back and relax on an island for a few hours and do a little sunbathing. Got to travel around the downtown area of Nassau. The next day, we went out to their own private island, which is called Coco Cay, courtesy of the people over there at Royal Caribbean, and that was a good time too. We got to do some scuba diving out there.
So you had a great time.
Had a great time. Nice relaxing time. It was well worth the time being on the water, and it's always great to see that deep blue water from the from the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay, you were on your Caribbean cruise. What I want to do is, and I've actually had the expectations to doing so since summer's getting here, is taking a trip on Amtrak from New Orleans to Los Angeles to go see my son up there.
Nice.
And just
Good idea.
ride and watch the view. And just watch the enjoyment and see the countryside.
Yeah.
I think that would be relaxing for me, don't you?
It certainly would be. And all that country out there, all the way through Texas, it gets a little bit deserty and so on and so forth. It's very picturesque. I lived in New Mexico for a little while. Been to Arizona, been to Southern California. I think you'd have a great time.
And of course, we've got some interesting shows coming up. I guess you can tell, can't you?
I can indeed.
Well, everybody else is going to tackle the subjects today. And you know, I don't know, have you been seeing these stories we've been putting up there with David Singletary, my 420 governor?
420 governor, yes.
I think everybody's worried about this because nobody would give David Singletary exposure. Do you think we're going in the wrong direction doing that, Galen?
I think that all of these sort of grassroots movements, pardon the pun, I think that a lot of times that they have to start somewhere, and for the people who are genuinely interested in making these things happen, there's only one way it can start, and that's with local people gathering together and figuring out what best course of action to proceed in. Do I give Mr. Singletary a chance at winning the governorship? Probably not. He's an outsider, and so on and so forth. But I'm very new to Mississippi politics this time around. I've only been here since October, and if he's doing the flesh pressing and he's beating the streets, which he seems to be, then he'll certainly gain traction, and at the very least, he'll gain some exposure to an issue that he's very passionate about.
Biloxi DI Press, what's on the way? Thursday, it comes out every Thursday. It's a local newspaper, 75 cents a copy. Tell them what you're the head editor over there. Tell everybody what's going on over there.
Well, we've been over a couple of the issues. The main one that we had this week was concerning the Bonnet Carry spillway and the impact that's having on the Gulf Coast and the attention that's being paid to it. So we did a nice thorough job of covering that. We have the blessing of the fleet, so anybody who picks up the paper can look forward to a full insert concerning not only the history, but the modern version of what they're doing with it. And we have all the pictures of the shrimp queens who are in there and the shrimp king. And so everybody's going to get a good idea about what's going on with that. If they've not been here for a long time, that's probably one of the best ways to catch up to speed. In addition to that, the Biloxi Library is going to be doing an Art is Everywhere thing for young people, families, and that's a lot of fun. It's good for the summertime. It's good for the summertime. And so we've got that coming up this week as well. And there's a crawfish boil going on in downtown Ocean Springs this coming weekend. And everybody should be enjoying that and hopefully come on out and support that cause. It's a bunch of guys who got together and decided to put one on, and so they're giving it another go.
That's
so
June 1st in Ocean Springs.
Correct.
Got the big crawfish, Trevor Reed over there. Right. Thanks for calling me, Trevor. I don't know if you've noticed that we're moving into different ventures on this television station now. We're looking at possibly presenting different focuses on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, whether they want to come out of town or not. Right. If I take a trip, my camera's always going to be with me. You know that.
Yep.
I'm always filming. So we're just taking different approaches. We're going in a different direction. I'll explain it to you as we go on.
All right. I look forward to it.
We call it reality television, MississippiCoastTV.com. Galen Parker from the Biloxi DI Press. If you get a chance, pick up a copy. Interesting reading. And maybe one day I'll have a story in there about me, or even
possibly.
Yeah, right.
Never know. You never know.
Yeah, right, friend. MississippiCoastTV.com. We'll be back with more. Stay close. For local origination programming from the beautiful Mississippi Gulf Coast to around the world, we're MississippiCoastTV.com. You're watching MCTV, MississippiCoastTV.com.
Hello, and thank you for joining me today on Mississippi Coast TV. We have a very special guest who's joining us today, and I think he's going to have a lot to say on some topics that we've covered in the past, but his viewpoint is different. Jerry, you are a former police officer from New Orleans, is
Yes,
that
ma'am,
right?
that's correct. Retired from the New Orleans Police.
Introduce yourself and why you're here today.
Well, I mean, I was born and raised in New Orleans, joined the police department June 94. Unfortunately, my career was done by 2001. A year prior to that, I started on a low form of narcotic, and it's just my opinion, but I was a heavy, heavy drinker. And to me, drinking is the gateway to a lot of other things. So went through Katrina. By 2007, my wife and I and our son, we decided to relocate to Colorado Springs because we actually went there Christmas of 2006, and we decided to make the move. It was spur of the moment. August 2007, we decided to start our new residency in Colorado, and by that time I stopped drinking, and I graduated to OxyContin, 40 milligrams a day, and Percocet. I was taking between 3 and 4 Percocets a day. And the addiction got progressively worse and worse. And what a lot of people need to realize is that when I was on OxyContin, it turns you into a Jekyll and Hyde. It really does.
Well, you've given us what sounds like the beginnings of a horror story. So obviously things had to have somehow turned around in your life from there. So what happened as this situation with your addiction became detrimental to your life and maybe even your family, your thinking? What happened?
I think a lot of times in life, and speaking for myself, I had to hit rock bottom. My wife told me it was over with. By this time, I was 15 months post-surgery. I had to get my left shoulder completely reconstructed, and my addiction just got worse and worse. However, November 2012, I actually voted on Amendment 64, and that same amendment, full legalization of cannabis, saved my life, in my opinion.
So,
Because I had choice to walk into a rec dispensary and make that decision. You know what? There's only one person who's going to change my life around, and that's me. And that's what I had to do. A lot of times you've actually got to look in the mirror and realize, you know what? It's over with. My marriage of 24 years was over with. And I haven't spoken to my son since June 7, 2016.
wow, that's a shame.
So there's a lot of collateral damage that actually goes into this.
Yeah, I agree with you that the addiction process in anybody's life is nothing short of devastation, not just for the individual, but for families as well. It's very difficult. But I'm understanding that you believe that having the option to use cannabis recreationally was what turned things around for you. Did you ever go through any drug treatment program? Did you ever work through any Narcotics Anonymous or AA program, anything like that?
Nothing. Nothing.
Okay.
What it was for me is that I had to decide one day is that when my wife at the time told me it's over with, I had to take a long, long, hard look into that mirror. I've almost shot myself twice. I've come close to hanging myself once. But for some reason, when I put that cannabis in my mouth via joint, whatever you want to call it, and I lit it, for some reason, I don't know what it is, but I know nowadays when you're talking about the attachment onto your brain receptors, my point is it works for me.
Okay.
It's my choice.
Okay. Well, I think your story is well worth telling, because obviously there are people who feel that the options for them as someone who had an addiction and able to, I would call it, step down to cannabis, the consequences were much different. But can I ask you, as you described your drinking problem, do you think you were an alcoholic
Oh, I
to
was.
start with?
Oh, I was. I was a full-blown alcoholic. I was easily drinking a case of beer a day. Sometimes I was drinking maybe a half a bottle of vodka a day. And I've eliminated all of that out of my life.
Okay, well, good for you. However that happened, I would tend to think that this is something that allowed you to get your sanity back. However, I don't necessarily agree that that's a good option for everyone. And I don't know how many other stories there may be like yours. In conjunction with your use of alcohol and your subsequent opioid addiction. I mean, was it also an opioid addiction, do you
Oh, absolutely.
Did that have anything to do with damage or injuries? I mean, how did you start on the opioids?
It was on-the-job injury. I actually had to get my whole left shoulder reconstructed. My rotator cuff was torn. My scapula had to be realigned. My tendon had to be reattached to the bicep. I've also got a tear in my lower back. At one time, I was 240 pounds. I've actually lost 70 pounds by way of getting into the mindset of, like I was saying, you know what, there's only one person who's going to lift me up, and that's me.
That's true. So in conjunction with your addiction, first to alcohol and then the injuries you had and starting on opioids, there was a lot of pain connected with that, I'm assuming. Are you still dealing with pain? Is that, something that the cannabis is helping you with?
I'm actually dealing more with psychological issues now. The pain, luckily, with me losing all of the weight and feeling better from head to toe. And here's the other thing, too, that really went ahead, and the reason why I'm involved in the movement so much is because October 2015, I had to rush my wife at the time to the hospital. We didn't know it, but her appendix had burst, and they did a battery of tests. They had to wheel her in for emergency surgery, and come to find out, that was on a Wednesday night. That following Monday, we were out of office. The emergency room doctor called, and he brought up oncologist, and our heart sank. And she went to the oncologist. He gave her choice because she brought it up to him. She said, well, doc, is there any way I could possibly take a natural remedy by way of cannabis? And he said, you know what, let's do it. Let's give it a shot. And she went ahead and she started on CBD oils, tinctures, and she was actually diagnosed with stage 2 stomach cancer. And that was October 2015. That following August 2016, went in. That was the last time I kissed her and told her goodbye. And they did a colonoscopy, and she came back clear. And she's in remission today.
Well, that is a wonderfully good story about that. And I know there are a lot of natural remedies that people use. I particularly would say alternative medicine in the treatment of cancer is much more effective than usually doctors will talk about. They're nervous about making suggestions for natural remedies. I actually don't really have an issue with medical cannabis. I do have a lot of issues with recreational cannabis, but here's a story, totally different, and a different opinion. And I really appreciate you sharing your story with us, Jerry.
Can I tell you the reason why I think there's really no difference between recreational and medicinal?
Sure, go ahead.
Bridget would call me at the time, let's say if she needed to, she needed some tinctures, CBD oil, whatever it may be. She could call me up. She had a medical card, I didn't. Here's the difference between medical and recreational: the price. You get the same stuff at a recreational shop you would at a medicinal shop. She had the medical card. She would call me up and say, hey, can you go get me A, B, and C? Just bringing up a hypothetical, whatever that may be. Sure, no problem. Here's the other thing, too. There's a huge misconception. I lived in Colorado Springs. The population now is about 700,000 people. There's medical shops all over the place. There's 2 recreational shops for 700,000 people, which is 5 miles southwest outside of Colorado Springs, which is still incorporated in Colorado Springs itself. But here's my thing. Let's just say a grandparent. I met quite a few people in Colorado who actually had to relocate, let's say from here, Texas. They went out to Colorado because their kids were having problems with epilepsy and other debilitating diseases. Let's say if they've got a family member who actually wants to go to Colorado and visit. Grandparents don't have a medical card. And the son or daughter will say, hey, would you mind going to the recreational shop and picking me up something for their grandkid? And you know what? I don't see any problem in it.
Well, again, I can see that point, but my opinion is the people who are advocating for recreational are not looking at it in terms of medical, but that's another topic that I know you're going to take up and talk about more. I want to thank you for coming, Jerry, and it's I already lost Kaczmarek, and I really appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
That's it for right now, Mississippi Coast TV.
You're watching MCTV, MississippiCoastTV.com, brought to you by Gator Boys Barbershop, located at 1626 Pass Road in Biloxi, right outside Gate 7. Visit Gator Boys Barbershop today. And also brought to you by Signs Plus in Gulfport. For all your signage needs, it's Signs Plus on Dino Road in Gulfport.
Me, R-E-V, MississippiCoastTV.com. Hello, Princess. How are you? Everybody's gathering at the studio today.
Princess.
We've got Regina Brim here. We've got Galen Parker. You know, it's just like a good old party. When Jerry coming in from New Orleans, drove all the way in. He might have his own show by the time it's over with.
He could.
He's got one heck of a personality. He really does.
Right. Well, he's got a lot to say, too.
I mean, you know, nobody wants to let me on the camera anymore. I did that whole show outside with Galen, and then Jerry, and then with Regina. And where'd they go? Oh, we're going to go cool off in the studio. Whips.
Rev, you're the one saying you need to stay out of the heat because you had a stroke before from it.
That's true. I'm going to try to get out there early. We're going to probably put together a live morning show where you come by and have a cup of coffee. You're right down the street. What are you shaking your head
Rev,
for?
I'm down
you
the
can't
street.
get in the car and drive right down the street to the damn studio?
I'm down the street until 6:45 when I'm out in Socia, 27 miles away. And you already
For a
know
woman
it.
that don't make no money, you sure
I don't make no money.
a Gulf Coast traveler. And then all of a sudden I find out you're going to Disney World. There you are.
That was my birthday gift.
You're there with your ears on.
17
Galen's in the Caribbean
years
cruise.
since I had a vacation, and my wonderful children were so sweet. They took me to Disney.
Regina just plans on just taking a trip to Seafood World whenever she wants to. She's like addicted to seafood. Have you noticed the pictures on the...
I think seafood is great.
I'm watching all you people. I want you to know I'm watching every one of you people here with this staff. Sammy B, where did Sammy B go? She went to, we don't know. But she'll be back right here on MississippiCoastTV.com. Stand by. Regina Brim's up next. I just wanted to pop in and say, hey, happy weekend. You know, it's a blessing of the fleet this weekend.
Yes, I understand.
Big deal.
Lots of stuff going on. Fishing, tournament, everything.
Well, the blessing of the fleet used to be a big deal. I mean, there was hundreds of boats out there. Now it's kind of like slendered down for the boat parade. But if I can go get on the blessing boat, I'll film out there. And then I'll come back and you'll see me with all my blisters on my lips. And I'll look like I have a major disease going on because I have to go out and do all this stuff. You see?
I'm so sorry for you.
Do you notice the approach I'm taking here? I'm trying to tell you that I am working more than I should be.
Well, Rev, I'm working more than I should be too, but just not on this station.
You need to take my suggestion of what I said. Okay?
Which is?
Take a life insurance policy on me. Because if I kick off, you're going to make some good money. Because I already got one on you.
Rev.
Because I know.
You can get one on me. I'm in perfect health. Getting one on you, that'd be way too expensive.
Regina Brim's up. She's back with Jerry. It's a counterpoint coming up right here on MississippiCoastTV.com. We are the originators, not the imitators. Remember, as far as it goes for all these women and all these guys on this network, let me tell you something. Nobody is going to rent space in my head. I'll see you on the other side.
You're watching MCTV, MississippiCoastTV.com, CoastTV.com. Some of the shows we offer here on MississippiCoastTV.com is like Sammy B and Rags to Brag.
It's Kristie Johnson joining you again from Mississippi Coast TV with End Times in America.
Welcome to MississippiCoastTV.com. It's me, R.E.V. Who's back. Galen Parker from the Biloxi DI Real Press. Come check out the party at the Love Shack Bar and Grill on Government Street in Ocean Springs, where they're always spreading the love with some fantastic comfort food, from homemade potato chips to dirty fries, tacos, wings, and more. Come check it out at the Love Shack Bar and Grill. And while you're there, come join the party every Friday night with karaoke at the Love Shack with Brother Ernie from 7 until. It's the Love Shack, located on Government Street in Ocean Springs, where you'll find your friends at the Love Shack, and they're always spreading the love. That's the Love Shack on Government Street in Ocean Springs. The time has arrived for local origination programming. From the beautiful Mississippi Gulf Coast to around the world, we're MississippiCoastTV.com.
Hi everybody, RJ Brim with FroLiberty, and I am sitting with Gerald Kaczmarek. Did I get the name right?
Yes, ma'am, you did.
Okay. As you've seen earlier, we sat down with our own Kristie Johnson of End Times in America to kind of talk about your position and why you're involved in the cannabis movement. We talked earlier, and I think we kind of walked the same path, as far as a medical issue, then being prescribed opioids, and then wanting to have that choice in our life. So one of the interesting things that I took away from your conversation with Kristie was you wanted to kind of say that there really is no difference between medical and recreational. Can you kind of expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest thing is, like I was saying, is that it should be choice. If you want to get a medical card, if you want to do that, that should be on you. If you don't want a medical card, and let's just say, to me, it's no different, and this is a sad thing,
right,
but there are more people that are killed every year between alcohol and tobacco, okay? And, in Louisiana, I mean, you can walk in any convenience store, get a cold beer, liquor, whatever you want. I mean, they've got alcohol there, tobacco, or if you're at Walgreens, per se. I mean, you can really get 3 of the deadly things that you need if you got a prescription. But my point is this, I really and truly believe that if you want that, compared to buying a 5th of booze, why can't you? It should be about choice. And the reason why I'm really involved in a movement is because I keep going back to the same thing as a retired police officer, is that anything that saves children is good for all. And how dare, with this prison industrial complex, you're putting people in jail that saves kids. I mean, you see what I'm saying? I mean, it's just... to me, what you're doing is you're turning patients into criminals.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we had talked before, the movement is gaining, kind of tidal waving in, but there's so much money, kind of keeping people addicted to opioids, kind of keeping people addicted to alcohol. And true fact, if you're an alcoholic and you quit cold turkey, depending on your medical condition, that could kill you.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay? If you quit opioids, it'll feel like it'll kill you. You and I have that similar story, but you won't die. Think about it. The alcohol is a $17 billion a year industry for something that causes cirrhosis of the liver, is arguably a gateway drug to opioids and all kinds of other things that, as we speak here now, if we've gone more than 5 or 10 minutes here in Mississippi alone, that there has been statistically 5 opioid deaths. Think about it, in 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes. That's a scary, scary thing. Yet, every time you go into a clinic, every time you go to the VA, I hurt my back. Okay, Oxycontin, Percocet. I mean, and the United States government pays that in the form of Medicaid, Medi-Cal, whatever. So there's a lot of, kind of politics and money involved in kind of pushing back for cannabis. But as a street cop, I mean, when you saw the impact of, let's say, alcohol, opiates, or cannabis, what was your kind of experience, along those lines?
9 times out of 10, when you're talking about alcohol, you're talking about aggressive behaviors inside of a family unit that's created so many problems.
Right.
I mean, and that was another thing too. I mean, there were a lot of issues that I had to deal with as I got older. I never dealt with.
Right.
However, once I was able to purge my body of all the trash, because I was on, Oxycontin, Percocet, Cymbalta for depression, okay? And I mean, once I purged my body of all that trash, and that's why I just, I got rid of it. I got it out of my bloodstream.
Right.
And you and I can relate, because people need to realize also, why can't somebody have an alternative with the withdrawals?
Yeah.
Are just awful.
Yeah. For me, after Katrina, I talked about, I had the fentanyl patch. It took me probably a good week to 10 days to just be okay. And I mean, not still having withdrawal symptoms, but not the waking up, the screaming, the smell, you're hot, you're cold. So I can't imagine people who cycle out of that. They go to rehab and they're clean for a couple of months and go back in that. I mean, I can't even fathom in my head going through that. As you read on some of the literature, people are using CBD to get off opiates. People are using CBD to ease some of the symptomology associated with withdrawal. But circling back around to your experience as a police officer, when you dealt with people who were on marijuana, what was the difference in the person that was your alcoholic that you were coming to deal with and the person that was on marijuana? Was there a difference in the aggression or the situation, or?
Well, I can tell you, I mean, I can really just sum it up in 2 separate words: alcohol, aggression; cannabis, passive.
Okay.
I mean, I've never come in contact, I'm talking about the natural herb.
Right.
I'm not talking about if it's soaked in formaldehyde, which they call clickums, or if it's got phencyclidine in it, which is PCP. I'm talking about the natural herb. Mm-hmm. Is that I've never had a violent pothead, per se, attack me.
Okay.
Alcohol, completely irrational. You're trying to talk to them and just becoming more and more aggressive. And then, like I said, aggression compared to passive.
Okay. One of the other things I took away from your conversation with Kristie was you said that there was a price difference between going to a medical dispensary and a recreational. Are we talking like $4 or $5, or are we talking like a great big difference between the two?
I think really, you may be talking between $10 and $15 compared to medical.
Okay. Yeah, but they're basically the same exact thing.
Oh, it is. It's the same exact thing that you would get with a medical card.
Wow.
Compared to walking in to a rec dispensary. I like adult use.
Right.
Where you can walk in, and if that's your choice. And here's another thing too that people need to realize also, is that when I voted on Amendment 64, everybody in Colorado actually voted on it in 2 ways.
Okay.
There are 272 municipalities in Colorado.
Okay.
Everybody in Colorado voted on it for it to be legal.
Okay.
Where it was legal statewide.
All right.
There are 176 municipalities that don't have recreational. 96 do.
Okay.
So you see the difference?
Right.
So what it was is that when I went into the ballot booth, voted for it to make it legal throughout the state of Colorado, yes. I lived in Colorado Springs, and you decided whether or not if you actually wanted to have a rec dispensary in your municipality.
Okay.
And that's the way they did it.
Well, one of the things, or one of the concerns from the people that are, let's say, anti-cannabis, is the effect for children. Now, I'm a mom, okay? So I definitely don't want like my 13-year-old to be able to walk into someplace, you know, and say, oh, I'd like to buy this or I would like to buy that. But that's not what has happened in Colorado, am I correct?
Correct.
You have to be of, what is it, either 18 or 21? 21 to buy it. So we're talking adults. And if there is use for children, it's a medical thing prescribed by a doctor for usually epilepsy, fibrosis, something like that. So it's not like, you know, the kids have access to it with recreational, am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I mean, I can say it from experience. I mean, growing up in New Orleans, when I was 16 years old, we used to buy booze all the time. And I mean, you know, and here's the other thing too, is like I tell a lot of people, and this is me saying it,
Right.
do something I was not. Be a parent. If you're so concerned about cannabis, talk to your kids about cannabis. Talk to them about alcohol. Talk to them about opioids.
Yeah.
I mean, sit down and talk to them. I mean, we're in 2019. I think this is something that needs to be addressed. If you're worried about certain topics, sit down, put down the phone, become a parent, and really talk about the issues and lay them out on the table.
Well, you know, I've always said in my earlier shows, the way to affect change, the very first step is a conversation. So this is a layered kind of topic, and we'll be back with more discussion on it. Regina Brim, FroLiberty, here on Mississippi Coast TV. I want to thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Why don't you just come in and design the whole show, okay?
I think I will
Why
sometimes.
you want to have a wrap-up?
Yeah, about the comments that were made and the positions that were brought up. What's wrong with that?
I didn't even have a chance to interview the man. The man comes to the studio. I didn't even have a chance. I talked to him outside.
Well,
on my
I didn't
special
know you
outside
had
broadcast.
I didn't know you hadn't interviewed him. I'm
So
sorry.
we're producing these different shows now,
Yes.
right? We've got all the staff coming together and showing the coordination we're doing here. I did that almost hour-long historic venture of Biloxi with Johnny Rhodes.
Yeah,
You know Johnny
I know
Rhodes.
Johnny Rhodes. I was in the Tea Party with Johnny Rhodes, so we've been, you know, friends through the political side, yes.
So the people that understand this organization has been involved in a number of campaigns. We
Wow.
face it every year. All right, let's talk about it real quick, Christine. What's your rebuttal?
Well, it's not necessarily a rebuttal, but as a result of the 2 interviews we did, and I wanted to hear Jerry's story. I wanted to give him a chance to talk about his experience because obviously it's very different than my own. And Regina, you know, followed up and had a lot of things that she shared. I just had some thoughts that I thought didn't get brought out yet, but there were concerns that I had that really weren't addressed.
Right.
And one of the things is that Jerry, in my opinion, because of what he's experienced and what he had, I think it would probably be very appropriate as a part of a person, let's say, going through a addiction and trying to move out of that addiction, that cannabis might be considered a medical option. They talked about people coming off of opioids and how marijuana could help. I think that's still a medical
I think
use.
we're getting the message out that we need to make out to the public. And I mean, let me tell you something, Kristie. Everybody has their different views, okay? No matter what happens, I'm probably being looked at in this community right now by people saying, he's taking on that David Singletary, guys. Well, let me tell you what. The guy can't get any other exposure. He can't get it at a local television station because they all think he's they'll act like he's crazy. The man's a very intelligent person.
Well,
I took a road trip with the man, okay? I know this.
Okay, but what I have a problem, and let me finish what I had to say about the interview with Jerry. I didn't want to confront him on issues because his story is very valid and what he had to share. But he started using cannabis as an adult and as a step down from his other addictions. That's not the same as legalizing recreational use for young people who are maybe at the age of 21. It's a different situation.
Okay, you used to be a counselor.
Yes.
I know this. Let's go back to this, okay?
Yes,
Real
sir.
quick. Number one, you're talking about using cannabis at a young age. Here you are. You're getting another catch in this whole series of stuff that continues to go from cannabis to harder drugs. The same thing can happen with alcohol, whatever. Why are we sitting here arguing about this subject all the time? That's what I want to know.
Because you know what? The primary focus that you bring to this, and when I was talking and finished my comment, and I hadn't made my other comment, you said, we're bringing this to the light of the people that we need cannabis. That isn't what I was saying. We do not need recreational cannabis.
You might not want it, but there's people out there who want to vote for
it. It doesn't matter. There's people that want to legalize all kinds of behavior that's inappropriate. Wait a minute. Rev, let me ask you a question. Is alcohol legal?
Yes, it is.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Is there anybody who is producing alcohol in this country illegally?
Of course there is.
All right, you think there will not be illegal
Is there anybody in this
production of
country
marijuana?
embezzling money from people of the United States of America?
You know what?
Is there anybody in this country that's doing this and doing that?
You know what?
You see, too
You're
much,
making the wrong comparisons.
no,
You're saying
too much
if there's sin,
dictation
wait a
goes
minute.
in. I'm
Oh,
63
God,
years old.
Yes,
Don't
and
you-
you're in no
don't-
danger of becoming addicted to something
whether I agree
besides
or
marijuana.
I am, like somebody said, you never really came out and you said you endorsed David Singletary, but you know what? The only reason I'm doing this is because the man don't have a chance to get it. Don't you think everybody should be able to get their message? These idiots
trying
up
to
there in
get
Washington,
mine.
these Democrats are getting their message out, right?
No, Bill.
Impeach Trump, impeach Trump.
So,
See,
they're not going to get it done. God help us, I hope not. But the point I'm making, Rev, is that you have this push for recreational marijuana, and as far as I'm
Kristie.
concerned, that is very dangerous. If we already have problems with alcohol, we already have problems with opioid addiction, which I agree. There has been way too much stuff prescribed for
Yeah,
people
the show
that
was-
are dangerous.
the show
But
was supposed to flow smoothly today,
Well,
but here we are again. As soon as everybody got complete, including
cut
you got
me off
complete,
every
well,
time.
guess what? You got to have a rebuttal. Now we got to sit here, we got to do the same argument over and over and over again.
Rev, I wanted to address what Jerry was saying because
Okay,
it was
address it.
very valid. The problem is his situation, I think, could qualify under a medical use. I am opposed to recreational use because what you're saying to young people that marijuana is not harmful. Well, I got news for you. Cigarettes are harmful, but they're
Okay.
legal. Just a minute. Alcohol is harmful, but it's legal. Why do we have to add something else? When young people use marijuana, that does not mean they'll never use anything else. And not everybody is going to change. But you remember my son-in-law who was dealing
Okay,
drugs
that's another,
years
that's
ago.
just another
Wait a
thing.
What?
Okay, I know.
You never heard it.
You had the story on the damn station.
I did, but the point is, he never sold any meth to anybody that hadn't smoked pot
Okay,
first.
you're talking about us talking about this on the air, okay?
Yes.
Well, let me be honest with you. When a young kid sits down to watch a football game, okay, and it's one of these National Football Leagues, billion-dollar companies, players getting paid to run up and down the field, millions and millions of
Yes.
dollars, but still, while they watch the game, they've got the Budweiser Clydesdales on there, the Coors
Alcohol
Light.
is legal.
But is that because it's back then it wasn't legal.
It was legal.
Back in the day, they used to put
No,
cocaine
wait.
in Coca-Cola.
Rev, that's true.
I mean-
do you think we should put cocaine in
It's like me
Coca-Cola?
walking into a damn bakery
No,
and saying,
listen.
"I'm sorry, I'm fat, but I have to have one of those pies."
Rev, you know what? You give the idea that young kids, teenagers, make decisions that are like adults. They don't. They're immature. And when you say that marijuana is legal for recreational use and it's a great alternative to alcohol,
No,
you are
all I'm
setting
saying
kids
is-
up for a future. Because here's the deal, Rev. Why do you have to use any of this stuff?
What do you
What's
mean?
the point?
Why?
Yeah, I'm asking.
Let me ask you
say,
something.
what?
When you
So
got
I can relax,
hemorrhoids,
so I
you
can
got
feel good.
hemorrhoids, why do you have to use preparation
You
aid?
know, what is wrong with you that you need to use marijuana? Tell me something
Did I
that's wrong
say-
other
there
than
you are-
medical needs.
There you are
of
pointing to me
someone
saying
that
that I'm using marijuana.
I did.
Did
You
I
said-
refer to you that you may have used
You
marijuana?
said- you tried to
Last time
imply that I
referred
have
to you about
hemorrhoids.
You being,
I don't have hemorrhoids.
You being a Christian, but you'll still go down to the casinos
So
and play the
is
slot
there
machine.
something? Oh, listen to me, Rick. I want you to know something.
It's always a two-sided
Oh my gosh.
story.
Now you're calling me a hypocrite, and that is infuriating.
Well, you know what?
I do not
Maybe
go down to the.
Do you want me to go walk off again?
No, but I mean.
Maybe this is the only way we
Maybe
can
I
argue,
will.
where we can stop this argument. Maybe
All right.
we've had a bunch of guests. I had a delightful day.
It was a
Should have set the damn
delightful
barbecue
day.
grill up. We could have had a happy little time, couldn't we?
I guess.
All right, I'm done.
Except he's
I'm
done.
I'm done.
Well,
See ya.
guys, Brim has walked out again. I guess I just feel like I'm overwhelmed when we can't get the practical concerns out there. But again, that's me. It's Kristie with End Times in America. Hope you'll join us again. Maybe Brim will come back on MississippiCoastTV.com.
The time has arrived for local origination programming. From the beautiful Mississippi Gulf Coast to around the world, we're MississippiCoastTV.com.